Well, welcome everyone to the Evolving Man podcast. I'm the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alain Dumonceaux. You know, many men growing up struggle with being picked on or teased for how our bodies look. You know, as young teenagers, we're getting bullied. Acne becomes a challenge for us, and we just have these feelings of not fitting in, especially in school. And you see, my guest today has such an amazing hero's quest about his transformation from not feeling that he was worthy of anything in life to leading and now mentoring men. And before we get into today's interview, I just want to remind you of our brotherhood, the Band of Brothers. This is our group of our mentoring group of a community of strong, resilient men, where each man is dedicated to the growth of himself and those of his brothers. And while that's a phenomenal program with great results, if you're really interested in raising the standards that you show up in life as a husband, a father, or an entrepreneur, then I encourage you to participate in our Heroes Quest. It's a 90-day mentoring program aimed to improve at least one aspect of your life. Now, you can find all of this at our membership site at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's show. Well, as you know, everyone, I like to get started with asking a few questions just to set the stage and get us ready for today's discussion. And so here are my questions for you. Were you bullied at a young age? And how about now? Are you still feeling bullied? And do you overcompensate in some ways just so you can hide your feelings of unworthiness? Well, Ty Wagmar of the Artful Man joins me today, and he's going to share his life journey and how he moved from his feelings of unworthiness into purposeful action. Hi, Ty. Thanks for joining me today. It's great to have you here.
Alan, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Right on. Good to see you. Now, you're a fellow Canadian, aren't you, my friend?
Yeah, you bet. Just over here in Ontario, in Lakefield, Ontario. So about 2 hours outside of Toronto.
Excellent. Good to hear. Right on. You know, I was reading a bit of your backstory and I found it really heart-wrenching and yet heartwarming all at the same time, because so much of that story resonated with me about how I grew up. And so I was wondering if you'd be able to share your hero's journey that transformed you from where you were to who you are today.
Yeah, that's definitely a deep question and a deep and dark and light story, to be honest. We're talking about growing up as a young boy and being bullied and picked on and feeling like you don't fit in. And, I kind of checked off all those boxes when I was going through high school and intermediate. I just kind of felt like I never had that group of friends, never really had relationships, struggled with acne, feeling a little bit overweight. You know, being a part of sports teams and all the guys are taking their shirts off and I'm like, I don't really want to take my shirt off. And, it definitely hindered my performance. And it's interesting how those things really stick with us as we move through life and as we, evolve into a man and start to grow up. And, that's where I speak a lot about in the work that I do about our protective mechanisms and how we protect ourselves and how we shield ourselves from the world so that we're not hurt. Whether that's at work, whether that's in social atmospheres, whether that's in our relationships, we've created these protective mechanisms to make sure that we move through life feeling safe and secure. And the process that I went through was having those protective mechanisms in place was actually cutting off my energy and my flow of my potential. Because for many years, I walked around with my guard up, like super vigilant state, eyeing everything up, making sure I was in control of every situation. I spent a lot of time working in a bar and it was like that hyper focus of worst case scenario. And that kind of protective mechanism was really kind of messing with my potential to evolve into, my true potential.
Yeah, for sure. I can totally relate to that. I spent a large part of my career in hospitality and I kind of get a sense of what you're saying, right? We have this persona that we put out there because it's our way to protect and keep ourselves safe. And that'll show up in different aspects. And now you did some other things too, right? Like you're pretty, even though you're talking about, and as a young man you were concerned with taking your shirt off, but you're as a young adult though, you really evolved and got into other sports and even some extreme sports, correct? And tell us a little bit about that part of your life and how that was somewhat transformative as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That plays a big role in overcompensating or compensating for how I was feeling inside. And, so growing up feeling overweight and not accepted for how I looked, I really transformed into taking control of my physical body. And that's when I made this decision that I'm never going to be picked on again. I'm going to look awesome. I'm going to be intimidating to protect myself. And that's when I really started pushing myself into more like extreme sports. I spent a lot of time racing motocross. I I also went from motocross to stunt riding motorcycles. So we had our street bikes and we would do like entertainment shows at monster truck events, go out, be the entertainment at halftime and, stunt our bikes. I moved into training mixed martial arts where I had a couple amateur fights. I was like really trying to thrive and push myself physically to get outside validation, you know? Like when I full circle it, that's what I was chasing was number one, the adrenaline, number two, outside validation that I'm the fastest, I'm the strongest, I'm going to be known for something, and that something is going to be a physical ability. So even from the mixed martial arts, I started running like the Tough Mudders. I ended up getting invited down to the world's toughest mudder, which was in New Jersey, and that was a 24-hour like super marathon where basically you would just run as long as possible. And at that point in my life, it was like the pinnacle of my physical conditioning. Like I was running 20, 30K as like maintenance runs and was really preparing myself. And that's where I hit a huge injury was when I was down in New Jersey. I actually tore my whole shoulder apart while I was in that event. And that was my turning point of being this physical being to being lost and not knowing who I was. So that injury led me down into, my own darkness of being confused of who I was and what I represented in this world because I wasn't performing anymore. I wasn't being validated for my physical abilities and ranking and competing. And I was like, well, if I'm not doing this, who am I now? And that's where, you know, you go from a pinnacle of what you think is important to hitting a very dark, deep hole, rock bottom of lots of things starting to open up, maybe not in the best way, in the depths of injury,
Yeah, no kidding.
injuries and recovery.
Yeah, no kidding. Seeing you got a chance to experience that at a fairly young age, and I know I'm in my mid 50s now, and as the idea of a retirement looms closer, the thought of and some of the research I read now on older men, and when they retire, how quickly that they will pass on. Like I read somewhere it was like a third a third of men that don't have a purpose, something more to live for after retirement, end up by dying like 5 years earlier than
Mm-hmm.
those that do have a purpose. And and it's a
Yeah.
sad state when you're at that age in life, and now you're starting to discover that at a far earlier age, but it's not any easier because it's still a journey to go through. And so you talk about navigating your way out of this darkness, right? And you talk about it not being a linear process. And I wonder if you can describe that for us and what you mean by it not being a linear process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's when we hit our own rock bottom, and whether that's an injury or a relationship loss or a career loss or addictions. And I had kind of experienced all of those in that time period. You know, we have a choice. We can either stay where we are or we can start climbing out of it. And that's where, when I'm saying it wasn't a linear process, it wasn't a straight ladder climb. You know, it wasn't a straight ramp. It wasn't a steady incline. It was like a roller coaster of ups and downs and getting sober and then going back into addiction and, you know, dealing with drugs and alcohol really hindered the recovery of my body, which then really kind of affected the way that my mind was moving through this process. And that's where, you know, through a lot of the things that I'd self-educated and some of the mentoring that I had in my life, I've kind of just realized that it's not just going to be a steady walk. It's going to be a leap, a jump, a crouch, a crawl, a pull up, a run up the hill. And it's once we get I guess I could say, um, you know, the idea and understanding that we are our own drive and that it isn't going to be the easiest, but as long as I keep taking one step forward, I'm going to make my progress in one way or another.
Absolutely. That is so true, Ty, that it's about one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. And that's what gets you through. And it's not about that straight line. That's so true and very insightful for a young guy to have that, especially with what you've gone through. Now, you've also talked a little bit about, you know, you had to lose yourself in order to find yourself. And I wonder if you can expand on
Hmm.
that thought as well.
Yeah, that to me, it kind of gives me goosebumps when I hear you say that, and it has a lot of meaning to me, and it's a part of the message that I like to share is, you know, we really don't know who we are until we've lost ourselves and then we rebuild, you know, and that isn't something that only happens once. That is something that's going to happen to us multiple times throughout life, but it's just going to be different circumstances, different environments, different reasoning. But you know, losing myself was losing that athletic, um, the athletic like perspective and the athletic vision and persona of me to then rediscovering like what my purpose is here during my lifetime.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, you know, I lost the one side of me, but because of that, I actually became more in tune with purpose and passion and what I like to call my dharma. You know, I tapped into my dharma.
Yeah.
And for anybody listening, like if dharma doesn't resonate with you, I tapped into like my purpose and why I feel like I'm here during this time on the planet.
Outstanding. Outstanding, Ty. That is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Now, it's about this time as well that you started to do, as you're doing your healing work and you're working through some things, you're also starting to learn about energy work, weren't you? And this energy
Yeah.
work was that really, I think, was that catalyst that really helped you move through the darkness and really process what you needed to process. So tell us about this energy work and the things that you had encountered and how that helped transform your life.
Yeah, so, you know, the energy work started with my own personal practice. And it started with learning and educating myself on yoga and meditation, and also in empowering practices like self-reflection, journaling, and spending a lot of time in nature. I started to kind of reclaim my power and my connection to the divine and the energy that is surrounding us and the energy that's flowing through us. And when I started to kind of connect to that internal part of myself, is when the doors started to open and the teachers started to come in. And that's what led me, you know, synchronicity and one event led to another is what led me to a coaching institute, an actual in-person coaching school, and that's IPEC. If anybody's interested in looking it up, IPEC, IPEC coaching, and what they focus on with coaching and their model of coaching is looking at everybody as energy, and we're all resonating at different levels of energy, and we can be in a catabolic state or an anabolic state of energy. And unfortunately, a lot of the people nowadays are in a catabolic state. They're in a negative state of energy. They're not resonating in a positive frequency. They're not happy with their job. They're not happy with their body. They're not happy with their relationships. So their vibration isn't that high.
Mm.
And that's where the coaching came in, was how to evaluate somebody and how they're resonating, and how to take them through a process to just step it up a little bit, and then just step it up a little more, and then a little more, and just work through different techniques and different kind of you know, practices to help them move through and shift up in their level of resonance. And that is what, you know, sparked the coaching, of course. Like that was my dharma, was that in public speaking. I've done a little bit of public speaking about, you know, health and wellness and just the way that we show up in this world. And again, each event leading to another event, and synchronicities just kept opening more doors that just I kept I kept up my self-education. You know, I just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper, where right now I'm actually enrolled in Dr. Gabor Mate's Compassionate Inquiry. And that's a
Nice.
1 year intensive training that evolves around addiction and trauma, which again is energy and how we show up. So it's been quite a wild ride, for sure, to say the least.
No kidding. Well, you're definitely a student learner, a lifelong learner. And I think that's, as men, the more that we do that, the better we get to understand who we are as individuals. And I think I really applaud you for continuing that growth and not getting that sense that I've arrived, because we never truly have arrived. And there's always more to learn about who we are, right? And Gabor Mate's stuff is outstanding
Exactly.
work. And I think you're going to do phenomenal with that work. Now, you mentioned him, but there
Yeah,
were
thank you.
three mentors that I noticed in doing some research that seemed to really resonate with you, and wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how the impact that these gentlemen had on your life. And the three men that I have are Francis Wheeler, David Dieta, and John
hmm
Wineland. So tell us a little bit about each of those individuals and their impact directly on you and your transformation.
Yeah. So those three gentlemen, in my perspective, are three of the leading mentors in men's work and initiation of being a man and the masculinity within this time period. And Francis Weller, he really talks a lot about the initiation process that a lot of us men aren't going through anymore because of how cut off we are of, like, tribal times. And like that's what he talks about, is like, you know, in the past, in the tribes, the men had to go through an initiation process to become known as a man in their community. They had to do something kind of outrageous and be in the forest by themselves with no clothes on for X amount of time, and come back, and they would come back into the community as a man, and they would sometimes even get a new name. And that's why I really like his work, because he's teaching this idea of initiation of men in Western civilization and in modern times. And when we learn about initiation, and we start to kind of, if we start to kind of think about our life, we can actually start to see times that kind of were an initiation process. Like, when did you leave the nest? If you've left the nest, maybe you haven't left the nest yet, but like, when did you move away from your mother? When did you go out on your own? When did you, start to become something for yourself? So that's where he touches a lot on that, and I highly recommend anyone into men's work to have a look into his work. And then David Data, he again is like one of the leading men who talks about masculinity and the feminine within every individual. Whether you're man or woman, you have a feminine energy and you have a masculine energy. And it's about becoming aware of that, learning about them, finding a balance, being harmonized between the two of them to really start your evolution of healing and relationships and the way we connect with our partners and the men around us. And yeah, The Way of the Superior Man is one of his profound books for men's work. Yeah, and the other one he has is Seeking Sex Through God, which I haven't read, but my partner has, and she was the one that actually led me to The Way of the Superior Man. And, I read that book, got hooked, and I actually took his online training as well, which was like a really cool experience. And then John Wineland is actually kind of David Data's protege. And John Wineland studied under him for years and years and years. But why I list them both as kind of men that I look up to is because John Wineland is kind of, he has a different language to the way that he teaches the type of work. And some of it I find easier to understand. And he does a lot of like kind of men's group work as well. So he's just like another kind of angle of something that's just super powerful, right? So it's nice to have different perspectives from different men, but it's all kind of the same thing when it comes down to the root of it.
Absolutely. And those are three powerful and influential gentlemen that you have there for sure. I'm familiar with those three gentlemen. And we've got to a point now where with your transformation, now that you're at a point where now you're starting to offer programs for men, aren't you? And so you have a few
Yes.
different things. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing now in around this men's work idea.
Yeah, so kind of where I'm at right now with my men's work and coaching and mentoring is, I do one-on-one work with men and women, which ranges from, a month to 3 month kind of periods where we kind of go through somewhat of a program. And I'm also I'm also formulating group work that goes along the same kind of program as that, because I find that a lot of men, I shouldn't say a lot, many men aren't ready to dive deep into a committed journey of opening their heart and opening their emotions, because it can be a rat's nest and it can be a can of worms. You open that up, it's just like this relationship's gone, quit my job, moved out of my house.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm really working towards creating some more group work so that men feel as though they have more of a container of men to kind of work on that. Besides the coaching modalities, I'm also a certified breathwork facilitator. So
Excellent.
I bring my breath work into my one-on-one coaching as well, but I also do breath work sessions outside of the coaching. Breath work is like a very, very empowering and powerful tool that I've brought into my life that I just love sharing with people. There's so much value to learning breath work and creating a practice. And then besides that is, just like yourself, I'm working towards creating my own community of men to create a brotherhood. Uh, it's coming together. It's going to be launching in the next 2 months. I've kind of been waiting for summer to end, let everybody get summer out of their system, and we're moving into December and into January, start the new year. And yeah, brotherhoods and men's circles is just, an amazing tool for us men to come together. And I've received so much, I don't know, like, I don't know how to even describe it, but my sense of connection to men and brotherhood is just deepened so much, and there's so much trust there with the men that I'm currently involved with that, yeah, it's rebuilding my trust with men.
Yeah.
and helping me relate and helping me understand that I'm not the only one that's struggling with X, 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 and X, or whatever it is. We all are. And when we realize we're all struggling with something, we don't feel as alone anymore. We have a sense of community and support and a safe container. So, yeah, those are the things that I offer and working on. And like you said, it's just a never-ending journey. It's always evolving.
Absolutely, and that is great work that you're doing, Ty, because it's so needed, right? And there's programs for men out there, and there's just not enough though that are focused strictly on men. And I think the more of us that are out there and doing it, what resonates with us, and we end up by being that beacon for them to have a place to come and feel safe. And so you're
Yeah,
doing phenomenal work, and I really applaud you
thank
for
you.
getting on that path. And so as we're getting close to wrapping up here for today, I just wanted to, I'll throw a bit of a curveball at you. And after everything that
Sure.
we've talked about this evening, if you could think of, a couple of keys or maybe three keys that you'd like the listeners to take away from like your personal journey and everything else that we've talked
Mhm.
today, that if you wanted them to remember three things, what would those things be?
Three things. Oh, so hard to bring it down to three. You know, number one is learning and understanding that our reality and our outside world is a reflection of our internal world.
Mm,
So if we want to make changes out here, we first have to start in here.
yeah,
This is where the change starts. And nobody's going to nobody's going to make that change for you. You're the only one that can change what's going on in your heart, your soul, in your mind. And that's, one of the first crucial steps to making big changes,
yeah,
making shifts in your life. Number two would be the road to becoming the road towards reconnecting with yourself or recreating yourself and stepping into your power and evolving into the best version of yourself is not a linear process.
mm,
And just to keep in just to remind yourself just to not give up, in that when you start that internal path of self-development, the universe has your back. You know, your higher self has your back. God has your back. However you want to look at it, you are supported by something that you can't see. And as long as you have that positive intention and you keep taking one step in front of the other, you're on the right track and you will create your most wildest desires. And it's an amazing thing. And number three would have to be seek help, assistance, and community. Don't be afraid to ask a fellow man for help, because we're not here to be in competition with each other. We have to realize that we come from a tribe here to help each other. So seek help or assistance, find community, and don't be afraid to ask for help. And I feel
absolutely.
like those will be my top three.
Outstanding. Well, that was fantastic for pulling something out of the top of your head. That was just amazing. Well done, Ty.
Thank
Listen, I
you.
want to thank you for spending the time with me today. We unpacked quite a bit about your personal journey and the work that you're doing as well, and hopefully we're able to shed some light on the importance of men learning to reconnect with the self. And I think as men, we struggle with that. We struggle with not with doing that work. I think the more that we can get that word out there to help men do that, then we can all grow and be better men. Now, if they were interested in getting a hold of you and doing some work with you, Ty, what would be the best way they can reach you?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So the artfulman.com is my landing page. And again, theartfulman.com. That has my backstory on it, that has some offerings on that. If you want to get to know me, what I've gone through, it's all there. And on all social media platforms, it's under Ty Wagmar. So that's TY, short form for Tyler, if anyone's interested. And last name is Wagmar, Wagmar.
Perfect. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
It's been so great to spend time with you today, Ty. I really appreciate reaching out on social media and us finally getting a chance to connect today. And I'm sure our listeners will have had learned a ton from you today. So thank you very much, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. It was great to connect. It was a great opportunity to be here with you today. I love what you're doing with the podcast and the brotherhood and the men's work. And, just to add to it, it's like, don't be afraid to reach out, right?
Yep.
Both of us on social media, we didn't know each other. Hey, man, what's going on? I like what you're doing. I like what you're doing. Sweet. Hey, you want to do this? Let's do this. Sweet.
Yeah,
Awesome. And there's a connection, right? And
absolutely.
that's so important in today's world, especially with everything that's going on. So
Right.
thank you.
You're welcome. Right on, my friend. Take care.
You too, Alan. Have a good night.
Thanks. Don't take off yet.